Hello and good evening to you. We are here for another session on our course P8326 Organization and Administrative Theory. First, I would like to apologize for not being available for the class arranged yesterday by Informa and you all. It was not deliberate. I had other things that I needed to attend to. So today we would continue from where we stopped last week. And if we do a little recast of what we discussed last week, you would understand that we looked at how administration is carried out and the different forms of it. We talked about a little bit about the recruitment processes, talking about the merit system, the spoils system, and then giving a background knowledge of how each of them forms an idea or an agenda of how organizations function. So today would be a subtle continuation of that argument of last week. Remember, there were two broad categories that we looked at. The spoils systems, where the kind of people that are recruited into the system are done or are brought in at the discretion of the chief executive. And if it concerns a country, at the discretion of the chief, of the president or the king, as the case may be. And it's a system where the moment people come into power, we made mention of the zero-sum game, where all the benefits, all the perquisites of governance are mostly exploited or taken away by the system, instead of the caliber of persons that come into the system. And we said that that is not an ideal system of governance. It's not an ideal practice when you talk about recruitment of personnel, as people should be given level playing ground to compete effectively, either if it is for them to gain promotion or certain recognition in service. It should be that people compete for those positions, not that they are handpicked, as the spoils system talks about. So under the spoils system, people come to power at the discretion or at the willpower of the chief executive or the president. And we even narrowed it down to how political appointments are gotten. And we said that when some kind of political parties come to power, they elect or select their own people and give them appointments to man certain positions. And those positions most times are not used in the interest of the masses, but to either compensate people for the role that they play in the political party, or to even appreciate them for giving support. And that way they are almost not accountable to the people, but they do what they do in their own interest. And we said that is not the right approach to administration. Then we now looked at the merit system that talks about pure merit, pure promotion as the yardstick for people to gain positions of authority. And we said that under that system, somebody at the lowest rank can grow to the highest position because the person will be subjected to certain examination conditions as other people. Not like this one that a few selected persons are favored above others. So today is a continuation of that argument, but looked at from another perspective. And as such, I will be sharing my screen with you so that we will all be carried along. So having said that, today's topic is on recruitment of personnel. As the name suggests, if you think about it from your own angle, from what the topic is about, you simply understand that it is just how organizations get their manpower, how they run their activities, and the caliber of persons that work in the organization. So we said from the material that, having discussed the general problem of personnel organization, like I tried to take your minds back to what we have discussed so far, the next question that engaged our attention is how to find suitable men and women to fill the various positions, various offices, the idea of recruitment of personnel. This brings us to the problem of recruitment of personnel. In ancient days, there was no problem of recruitment, as the king himself selected and appointed his employees, the spoils system that we talked about earlier on. The problem, in fact, arose with the expansion of kingdoms into empires. When to carry on large-scale administrations, employees were required in a greater number. It was essential to secure costs and ensure time to run the administration successfully. The idea of the merit system now comes in here. Okay, like the first statement talks about how kings can just appoint anybody and then the person becomes the one in charge of certain positions. But because of the complexity or the challenges inherent in that system, there was the need to change the practice. And under this arrangement, we now saw that there are now more roles for people to play. So the idea of just handpicking people and putting them in positions without checking their qualifications or the capability they have, it's not the best form of gaining the kind of staff that should work in an organization. Hence, the whole idea of reducing the cost of the embezzlement or the corruption that exists in the spoils system, reducing that idea now brought about the issue of having a sustainable arrangement where people compete for position. And we say that China is said to be the first country to develop scientific system of recruitment through competitive examinations as early as the second BC. In modern times, Prussia first introduced a system of competitive examination. So they all saw that the whole idea of the spoils system or the king picking whoever he wants is not fashionable and it's not even sustainable. As such, there was the need to rearrange the system, and they now brought about the scientific method of recruiting people into organization, which is built around the merit system. And I'll see your picture. Okay. So, having said that, the objective of this lesson today is that at the end of this unit, you should be able to define the concept of negative and it should be positive recruitment, not position recruitment. Define the location of the appointing power, state the method of recruitment. So, in continuation of that, the concept of recruitment. Remember, like I said earlier on, let's assume the spoils system is the negative system now, and then the merit system is the positive system. So if you narrow that down to the whole idea of recruitment, we still have two variants there, the negative and the positive aspect of recruitment. And we said here, we shall be looking at both of them anyway, but we said that if recruitment stands for eliminating the political or preventing favoritism or keeping the rascals out, it is termed as a negative concept of recruitment. If you are conversant with the spoils system already, you would see that we talked about the political class, people coming to power, even if they are not qualified, but at the discretion of the king or the ruler of such an environment or the chief executive. Even people that are of lesser experience and qualification can become bosses in the organizations, and that is not the right approach to recruitment of staff. So we said that in the initial stages, the merit system was substituted for the spoils system through the provision of the Civil Service Commission. Such a method of recruitment aimed at providing equality of opportunities to all to compete in open market public service. Recruitment methods did not strive to provide a competent body of public servants. They were more emphatic on openness than on competition. This negative approach resulted in recruitment of mediocrities. In the word of Kingsley, the result of this approach was that the rascals have been kept out, perhaps, but so many. This statement is not right. Okay, the idea behind it is that due to the fact that the spoils system promotes mediocrity, promotes incompetent people gaining position of authority, there was the need to change the system because it was doing more of a lot of harm to the idea of selecting the best candidates than the merit system. And under the merit arrangement, you find it that there's the possibility of having the right people in the right jobs. Like we know in Nigeria, we have had lawyers manning positions where maybe medical practitioners should be. We have had medical doctors in ministries that have nothing to do with medicine. And that is an abuse of the system. So what this statement is trying to say, therefore, is that under that arrangement, you cannot guarantee having the right caliber of persons in the position, as you risk losing the right people for the right positions, and putting wrong people in wrong places as well. That's where you can find a very qualified person not having a job and roaming on the street, but you see somebody that is less qualified because he knows one or two persons in government can easily gain positions in an office environment, and they go there and do almost nothing because they have little idea of what the system is about. So that is a negative aspect of recruitment. And we go further by saying that now the emphasis in recruitment shifted towards securing the best and most competent persons for public service, the merit aspect. Thus, the concept of positive recruitment emerged. Positive recruitment, therefore, means that the personnel agency will recruit the best, the most talented, and competent personnel. Thus, in positive recruitment, new techniques will have to be employed to attract the most qualified personnel. In other words, recruitment programs will have to be so devised that only qualified applicants get a chance to compete. If you look at this critically, the argument is very simple. And it's simple in the sense that one talks about the right people in the right position, the best and most talented people, the most competent people coming into the service, be it private or public. And the other one talks about handpicking people by virtue of the influence they wield in the system. So if you look at it closely, you already have an idea of the one that should be the most approved approach in recruiting people into organizations. And then we go further by saying problems of recruitment. Recruitment in the typical phraseology of administration means attracting the proper and suitable type of candidates for particular jobs. Government, it is to be remembered, is not the only employer in society, but one of the many competitors in the open labor market. It offers certain terms and conditions of employment. So do the other employers like banks, industrialists, universities, etc. People join the service where they get better pay and other attractive conditions of service. It hardly needs an emphasis that if the government wants to secure and keep highly qualified personnel, it should tender better terms of employment. There are some people who, on humanitarian grounds, hold that every citizen should get equal opportunity to occupy public office. But the interests of administration require that only competent and deserving persons with keen intellect and skill should get the public office. The securing of right and competent persons for administration gives rise to the following problems. Location of the appointing power, method of recruitment, qualification of employees, method of determining qualifications, administrative machinery for determination of qualifications, etc., etc. So what this statement is saying, and based on the knowledge we have of administration, it is easy to understand that when you have certain criteria or checklists that people should put on the table and understand them before people are employed, there is an angle to it that violates all these arrangements. Like you find now, if you see an advertisement for a job, for example, you will see what is required. Sometimes they tell you the minimum qualification must be a degree holder and maybe in particular fields even. But at the end of the day, when those recruitments are conducted, you find that people that are even less qualified, that are probably not degree holders, or even degree holders in the profession or in the discipline that is not in connection with the advertisement, end up having those jobs. And when you find out why those things happen, you come to a simple conclusion that it is because they have relationship with the political class. So this is more like a competition of the spoil system and the merit system playing a role in how organizations function. So if you want to have a functional organization that is built on result orientation and capabilities, you must insist that the right caliber of persons are employed. And what this argument is saying that even in the public service, the right caliber of persons should be employed. But we know that if you narrow that down to our Nigerian system, we still have a lot to desire because it is far from what we are reading here and learning here. For example, you go to some organizations, you find some people from one particular section of the country, whether they are qualified or not, they are there. You go to other places. So merit is sacrificed in Nigeria completely. And we are saying here, based on the knowledge of the material here, that it is not the right approach to recruiting people for positions in the country. So we shall discuss the problem that are associated with this. We mentioned certain aspects in the last slide. We talked about location of appointing power, method of recruitment, qualification of employees, method of determining qualification, administrative machinery for determination of qualifications. So we shall be looking at them one after the other and then trying to make meaning of them as they relate to the practical reality of how people get jobs or how people are recruited into organizations. Now, we say location of the appointing power. The first question to be decided in respect of the selection of personnel is to which authority the selection of public officials shall be vested. That is whether the people will directly elect the public officer or they will be appointed by some officers or organs of the government in proper. The first method, called the democratic method, that is in talking about how political officers are recruited now. And then we're now talking about democracy. The first method, called the democratic method, is supported on the basis that democracy can have full effect and meaning only when all public officers are directly elected by the people. To provide for effective public control over the public employees, this method is necessary. Such method is made use of when the service to which appointment is to be made is purely of a policy-making nature, e.g. chief executive, or when the service is of a local or restricted nature. If we study this method critically, we would find that it can be made use of only when the service to which appointment is made is purely of policy-making nature, or when the service is purely of a local and restricted nature. It is quite proper that the officers whose functions are of a political character that has to do with the formation of policies should be selected by the people by ballot. What this is saying is that, as we know it within the Nigerian context, for example, there are certain positions in government that you can only get them by virtue of the votes that you get through the ballot arrangement or through elections. Let me put it that way so that everyone would understand. For example, you cannot become governor by appointment. It happened in the military era or in other forms of arrangements before now, but under a democratic arrangement, you cannot become a governor of a state by appointment. But a governor can appoint people based on his own interest and discretion without them necessarily having the popular will or support of the people. Like when the governor appoints a commissioner, for example, even if the people are not entirely in support of it and he feels the person should be there, most times the will of the governor reigns supreme over that of the masses. And we are saying here that for certain kinds of position, they should come through popular vote, through the interest that people hold or the belief that people hold. In as much as there are rooms for other forms of appointment, like we mentioned the chief executive here now, the real people that are the appointing powers most times should be the electorates for certain positions. So that is what the whole statement there is talking about. But they should not be given the right to select the officers whose duties are purely of an administrative, technical, or special character, calling for experience and previous trainings. So talking about the idea of maybe the governor appointing somebody else to man a particular position, this argument is now saying that in administration, that should not be. Because if you are handpicked into certain positions without having the trainings and the rudiments of what is required of that position, you might not function properly. Like we know it today in Nigeria that anybody, any tout can be picked from anywhere and be given positions without necessarily understanding what happens in that arrangement. And to a large extent, it is a problem in itself to the system. We have seen situations where people that are not properly schooled have held position in this country. Some of them have not even worked to have understood what is required of them in the system, but they have their ways of coming into power because maybe they are appointed or someone that has been elected has decided to give them those kind of positions. And then at the end of the day, they make a mess of the system. So the argument here is that in an administrative arrangement, such should be discouraged, because if competent persons are not put into position of administration, you risk not having the results that or the purpose for which such an establishment is set up for. The reason is that sentiments and catchwords play play an important part in elections. Technical competence can be secured only by appointment and not by election. The democratic principle, therefore, under which voters elect directly by ballot their officers, is far more applicable to directing than to administrative personnel. So talking about the caliber of persons that should either be employed or appointed. That is not in all positions that appointments are necessary, but in certain positions, and the other ones, an appointment can still hold sway. But the bottom line of it is that if it concerns administration, there is the need to have very competent people man those positions. So the second checklist that we have here, taking your minds back to before we talked about appointment of the appointing officer, location of the appointing officer, then that's the one we discussed just now. The next one is method of recruitment. So we go to the slide that talks about the method of recruitment. Sorry, I'm trying to get the slide up. Just hang on a bit. Okay, so we were saying on the second aspect, method of locating the appointing authority is vesting the power of appointment formally in the chief executive, but actually in a semi-judicial autonomous body termed the Civil Service Commission, while the latter functions as general personnel agency of the government. In the United States, however, the appointment of the more important executive or administrative officer by the chief executive does not become effective until approved by the Senate. Okay, this is also in continuation of the appointing officers. And that even when appointments are made, it should be subjected to the acceptance or approval of an independent or semi-independent body, like the Civil Service Commission in the case of public service, that the Civil Service Commission should hold the power to either accept or advise against certain positions. But like we know it in Nigeria, when the chief executive says a thing or when the president says a thing, most times it is not at the discretion or within the purview of any individual to want to scrutinize or even give a contrary opinion as to those arrangements. So the second point is method of recruitment. The next problem, which is no less important than the preceding one, is that of recruitment from within and recruitment from without. As Lewis Meyer has said, methods of selection are basically two in number: selection from without the service or recruitment, and selection from within the service, embracing and reassignment and promotion. The problem goes, however, much deeper than the more technical choice between detailed method. It goes to the nature of the whole personnel system. Upon its answer, as much as upon any other factor, and perhaps more dependent on the attractiveness of the service, ultimate caliber of the personnel recruited and trained, and its morale. What this whole statement is trying to say is that there are two basic procedures for this kind of recruitment. You recruit within. That is when people grow through the ranks to get to the highest position of authority. And then the recruitment from the outside is this political arrangement that we talked about, where anybody can be appointed and be given positions without the person having adequate knowledge of what goes on in the system. And we are saying here that when those two are put side by side, one ordinarily should know that recruitment from within would be more productive, as the people must have spent a number of years gaining experience and being trained in the jobs that they do, unlike the political arrangements where people are handpicked and then given positions of authority without necessarily having adequate knowledge of the system. If compensation standards can be regarded as the foundation of the personnel system, the lines of promotion and the levels of recruitment constitute its framework. Before we proceed further to examine the relative merits and demerits of the two systems, it may be pointed out that the problem really arises in the case of the higher middle positions only. It is obvious that the lowest posts must be recruited from without, but there is no lower class of personnel from which to promote. And it is also equally obvious that recruitment of fresh and inexperienced men from outside to the highest position, like those of heads of departments, will not do. So I think we will be doing more of explanations, and at your own time, you can read through these things and still make meaning of them. But the central idea here, like I said earlier on, It's about how the best and most competent persons gain the right positions, either in government or in public service. And the whole idea is premised on the fact that if you promote people to become bosses in the organization, they tend to have an attachment. They tend to have more knowledge and more experience than when you bring people from outside. And we know that our political system continuously interfere in the arrangement of the civil service. You have an arrangement where somebody that has worked for like 35 years or 30 years, as the case may be, and up to like 50 to 60 years of age, would have somebody that is less than maybe 40, 50 becoming his boss, and maybe coming from outside with very little experience, but still coming to decide on what happens. So those are all challenges that the system of administration are faced with as it relates to sustaining the system, either in the private sector or in the public sector. So there are merits and demerits of this arrangement as well. You know, in our discipline, nothing is entirely bad and nothing is entirely good. Everything can be subjected to one form of scrutiny and criticism or the other. So within that arrangement, we have merits and merits of this recruitment arrangement. And we said that it provides ample opportunity for advancement to the employees. As such, it serves as a great incentive to the hardworking and conscientious employees. That is talking about employing within, or promotion or recruitment within. That when that happens, people, the hardworking ones, have the tendencies of growing on the job because the opportunities are there. This indirectly helps in effective efficiency because they must have had a number of years of experience and they are conversant with the roles that they carry out in the organization. So there is the tendency that they will be more productive than when you bring people from the outside. The very expectations of promotions as a reward for honest and intelligent workers heightens their morale. So when you know that if you put in your best, you will be appreciated, and then your level of intelligence can take you to the highest position, you tend to be more attached to the job because you know that hard work will end up paying than not being committed. The experience gained by the employees in the lower jobs helps them in undertaking jobs and entailing higher responsibilities. Like we have said earlier on, when they go through the jobs, they have adequate knowledge of what happens within the system, and it is easier for them to perform, and you see that it is always result-oriented. The government can safely entrust to them jobs of higher responsibilities because they know the job, they can be accorded higher responsibilities. The examination system is not a real test of one's ability. As such, the defects of the examination system is removed through recruitment from within or promotions. The employee's work is the best criteria to judge his work. Procuring of efficient employees through the system is easier than that of direct recruitment. It is economical as cost of training is saved, and so many other points. So what this argument is simply saying is that when people grow through the ranks, they have adequate knowledge of the job than you going to bring people from outside. And when you bring people from outside, there's the need for you to train them and even expose them certain things before they'll begin to have little knowledge of what is going on. And in most cases, when those people come from outside, they don't stay for too long. Like within a political arrangement, for example, after 4 years, almost all political appointees would be relieved of their position. So at the point where they begin to gain knowledge of what the system is about, their tenure of office most times expires. And that, to a large extent, costs the system even more. It's just like having somebody in your house that knows what happens in your house, and then you go out there to bring somebody to come and start afresh. Before the person will understand the corners and the secret places in your house, most times the person's duties or roles expires. So there's no way you can compare an insider to an outsider. The insider knows more. The insider is a part of the system, and the insider, to a large extent, protects the system than people coming from outside. So, like I said earlier on, it is a comparative analysis of what we discussed last week, the spoil system, and what we are discussing today as a procedural approach for recruiting people into the system. The employees get practical training while serving in an office. The burden of public service commission is lessened a great deal, as promotion to higher posts avoids the undergoing of process of advertisement, examination, interviews, etc., etc. So you see that when you make use of the staff that you have within the system that have stayed for a while and have gotten adequate knowledge and experience, you save costs. You will not have to go and advertise to get people that have a slight knowledge or requisite knowledge, as the case may be, to come and start afresh. So the people most times that are within are more better to be positioned for higher roles than people from outside. So defects. Okay, there are so many other points here, but I think it will be best to move to the defects because they are self-explanatory. And it all boils down to having the right people for the right position. And that can be done within. So it's most beneficial and economical to even recruit people from lower ranks and allow them grow through the ranks to the highest position than bringing people from the outside. So that is what the whole argument is about. So the difference is that the obvious objection to consistent restriction of selection to those already in the service is that it so severely narrows the area of selection. Okay, what this point is trying to say is that when you bring people from outside, in some cases, they have gained other experiences beyond the ones that you already have inside. Like somebody coming, for example, from the banking sector to now become a chief accountant in an organization have to a large extent some measure of training and experience from the banking system, from the banking sector before coming into the mainstream public service. But if you use people that you recruited from the lower cadre to become now chief accountants, they have not had the experience of other aspects or other organizations. So most times the argument is that most times the scope is narrowed. The experience is a narrow one. They only understand what happens within their environment. But when you bring people from outside, there's a tendency that they have seen more than the people you have within. Another point is that it is arguable that regardless of the relative efficiency of the personnel which may be recruited from without the service as against that which may be promoted from within, adherence to selection solely from within the service leads to stagnation and conservation. The point here is that when you make use of the people within, there is some measure of retardation or some measure of stagnation in the knowledge and experience that they have, because it is streamlined and regimented, tailored towards what they already know that is obtainable within the system. There is no room for new ideas, no room for innovation. So most times when people come from outside, they inject new energy, new ideas, new roles into the system, and in some cases, it becomes very productive. Occasional injection of new bloods, okay, I made mention of new energy and all that. New blood into a system, particularly at or near the top, is highly desirable. The idea is still in line with what we said earlier on, is that when people come in from the outside, they have gained some measure of experiences from different fields and different positions. And when they come into the organization, there's the tendency that they can revamp certain aspects that people within may not have adequate knowledge about, because they are used to being within, used to growing through the ranks and not having the exposure that those from the outside would have. So the argument, therefore, is that it is sometimes best that you bring people from outside. Like I said earlier on, our discipline is a multidimensional discipline with different ideas and different answers to questions. Like where you see a merit, somebody else can see the merits. So in as much as we talked about how the beauty of having people within the system promoted to higher position of authority is a good idea for sustaining the system, bringing people from outside is equally good in the views of other persons as well. So supposing you are asked a question around this, it is not a one-size-shoe-fits-all. You can tilt a little to the left, a little to the right, but ensure that the right caliber of persons are employed in the final analysis. It puts premium on, sorry, excuse me. It puts premium on experience and as such ignores the brilliant university-trained youths. The mediocrities may go on getting higher positions simply because of seniority, that is, of being in service. This is, however, condemned as an undemocratic system. So what this is saying is that in as much as people have maybe been in the system for so long, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have all the ideas about it. You can have, like the statement here, a mediocre recruited from the scratch. It doesn't rule out the fact that such a person will not be productive. So even if you promote such a person to the highest position of authority, there is the tendency that he will still not be productive. So it is not entirely out of place to bring people from the outside to man positions of authority. So that is for recruitment within. So now there's another angle to it, recruitment without. The recruitment without simply means recruitment from outside. Like all that we have discussed earlier on, in terms of having people grow through the ranks, having people within the system to understand more of the system, this is saying that people can come from outside and be productive as well. So you can see a lot of write-ups here, but the summary of it is that in as much as people can also grow from the ranks, which is regarded as recruitment within, they can equally come from outside, which is the recruitment without, and still be relevant to the system. So for the sake of adhering strictly to the materials we are given, we would go further to read that it is claimed that it is in consonance with the principles of democracy in as much as all qualified persons get an equal opportunity for public office. Two is that it widens the area of selection and therefore the best talent in the country may be found. In other words, when you broaden the scope of recruitment and not necessarily confining yourself to what you have on ground already, there's a tendency that you can get very important talent that would be equally relevant to the system. It brings in new blood into the service by giving the young men and women an opportunity to enter the services. It keeps them continuously adapted to new ideas and outlooks of society and prevents services from becoming the exclusive preserve of the experienced and conservative people. Remember, this is still an argument of having people within and bringing people from outside. So what they are saying is that when you bring people from outside, they can equally add more value to the system beyond even those that you have kept in one place and they are going through the ranks without necessarily having other experiences or trainings from the outside. So this is simply saying that people from the outside can equally add some color and glamour to what administration is about in an organization or even in the country. In technical and professional fields, development of new technique requires new entrants to provide leadership in the adoption of those techniques. Like if you have, for example, an engineer within your organization, say a civil engineer, and then there's the need for a duty to be performed by an electrical engineer, the civil engineer cannot do what you want, and you must outsource such a position. And that way, it means that people from outside have very relevant roles to play when they come into the system as well. And there's also the argument that recruitment from without impels the employee already in service to keep abreast of new developments in their fields. They might prove inferior in competition for higher posts when pitched against the young men abreast of new techniques and new methodology. The argument here is that when you bring people from the outside, they're exposed to your own staff or the people you have in the system already new ideas, and that to a large extent can make them more competitive when they meet their equals elsewhere. But if you allow it to be strictly about the people within the system with little knowledge of what is obtainable out there, it means they cannot be entirely productive as the system should be. So there's also defects of this recruiting from outside. And we have said that direct recruitment has also been denounced by the critics on the ground stated below. The system entails huge expenditure as a lot of money is to be spent on the training of the raw young men joining service for the first time. Remember in the other argument of recruiting within, we said there's you eliminate cost of advertisement, cost of training new staff, and then interviews and all that. But this argument now is that when you recruit people from outside, you need to spend a lot of money on them to before they will be carried along and understand the internal workings of the system. So it is not entirely a good idea for you to recruit people from outside. Like I said earlier on, when you are faced with a question like this, You need to bring out the high points of why recruitment from within is necessary, and equally explain in 1 or 2 lines why it is not a system to be embarked on. Then the recruitment from outside too has its own strong arguments in favor of it, and we have looked at a few of them. Now we are looking at the demerits to say that recruiting people from outside, you spend more money on training them before they will understand what the organization is about, the goals and objectives of the organization, even the nature, the character, and the value system that are inherent in the system in itself. So it becomes a challenge when you bring people from outside and they don't understand what hitherto was the practice. We have said also that it reduces incentive to good work, as chances of promotion to higher service is bleak when posts of higher ranks are filled through direct recruitment. That is, the people within the system might not have the chance of growing through the ranks because positions that they should rise to are outsourced, or people are brought in from outside to occupy those positions. So it means that somebody can be in the service for like 30 years, and then from nowhere, another person can be brought to become the boss of such a person. So to an extent, it's discouraging. When you consider it in administrative terms, it is discouraging, because having put in your best, your energy, your experience, and everything, then somebody comes from the outside to become your boss. So in most cases, it creates a feeling of apathy and less commitments by the staff that have been within. The old experienced people already in service will not tolerate young men fresh from the colleges or universities to boss over them. Even if the people within services are given opportunity to compete with the young colleagues, they are likely to lag far behind, as they are not acquainted with the latest knowledge of the university subjects. We have had system. What this is trying to say is that sometimes when people come from the outside, the ones within get furious about it. In our regular language, they get jealous that, okay, you are bringing people that are of higher qualifications to come and become bosses after they have worked for you for many years. So they tend to project that kind of disunity that can collapse the system or even ruin the whole idea behind the missions and visions of an organization. And even the ones from outside to have the tendency to feel that they are bosses and that they are more experienced and more qualified than the ones that are within. So this kind of arrangement where people see themselves as either too superior or too inferior to a large extent is not good for an organization or for a system. When I say a system, sometimes I refer to a country. So what that is saying is that people from inside sometimes get angry that people come from the outside. And then the ones from the outside feel that they are more experienced and more qualified, and then they tend to disrespect the ones within. And it's always a challenge when that happens. So for you to have a functional administrative system, it is always best that you balance the two. In as much as you should not concentrate on one side beyond the other, there should be an arrangement that talks about stability and balance in the system. Having said that, we'll go further by saying that in terms of the material that we are handed to, with the advanced age, their memory is not as sharp, and power of comprehension is not as good as that of the young collegians. Under this system, recourse is generally taken to examination or tests or interviews, which are not the sure test of judging individual abilities. They cannot be considered as foolproof methods for assessing the personal traits of the applicants. Another point is that public service commissions or other agencies of recruitment will be overburdened if for all service recruitment is to be made from without. That is, the system in itself would have a way, would implode if you entirely bring people from outside. Like, we know of how people can be employed today. Like when you graduate now, for those of you that are working already, or for those that don't have jobs already, when you get your degree and you are employed today, maybe you be employed at level 8 or 9, depending on the system, and you grow through the ranks for say 20, 30 years. Then from nowhere, maybe a fresh graduate or a graduate of like 3, 4, 5 years experience would now be appointed to become your boss. So just that feeling alone is not right when it comes to administration, because it should be a system where hard work is rewarded, experience is rewarded, and then the capability or capacity to pass examinations and grow through the ranks should equally be be rewarded. So it is not in all cases that people from outside should be brought into the system, unless if where there is the need for experienced hands in such an arrangement. So the summary of it all is that in as much as we have all these systems and we are exposed to these systems, recruiting from within, the advantages and disadvantages, the recruitment from outside, the advantages and disadvantages, the whole idea borders around how the system is sustained and how to balance it up so that there will be equity and there will be level playing ground for every individual or every staff to attain the highest position in the land or in an organization. In conclusion, above, we have appraised the advantages and disadvantages of both systems of recruitment from within and recruitment from without. In practice, both systems are followed in most countries. It seems desirable that selection in the higher post of administrative cadre should be mostly on the basis of promotion. Take note of that statement. In practice, both systems are followed in most countries. Remember, I said that when you are faced with such equation, you should do a little to the left, a little to the right. You don't rule out any of them. Both of them are relevant. They are all system of administration, system of recruitment, and they are all relevant in guaranteeing the sustainability of the system. And remember, the system differs. It is not a unilateral arrangement. What happens in one organization is different from what happens in another. What happens in one country is different from what happens in another. So it depends on the peculiarity of your own system. So all these are relevant. Recruiting from outside is very important. Recruitment from inside or promotions from inside is equally very important. So it seems desirable that selection in the higher post of administrative character should be mostly on the basis of promotion. So there are certain positions that should be reserved for promotion from within, because when you bring people from outside, they might not be as productive as those that are already within the system and have an attachment with the system, and the experience cannot be overstated. As such, some positions must be reserved for growing through the ranks and through the system, while other ones can be open for recruitment from outside. For example, a deputy commissioner of a district should be promoted to a commissioner. In Nigeria, there is direct recruitment for all the higher services, but a certain proportion of posts varying from service to service is reserved for being filled up by promotion from below. Summary: it has been correctly remarked that an extensive outside in recruitment at the higher grades is a reflection of the ability and talent available with the service and undermines the career idea, while complete absence of direct recruitment for the higher position is also a reflection of the service, because it might be a symptom of self-complacency. So our concluding remark, therefore, is that all the systems mentioned, recruitment from within, recruitment from the outside, are all relevant, and they have the advantages and disadvantages considering the system on ground. As such, none is entirely out of place. So it depends on what you think is the ideal arrangement for you or for your organization, and then you adopt any of the practices. So having said that, I think we have come to the end of the class, and then we'll open our floor for questions and contributions, or where you think we should elucidate a little further. So I'm going to unmute as many of you as possible, and if you can hear me, do well to ask your questions or make your contributions. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that Abologbon Emmanuel?
Yes. Yes,
okay,
sir.
I can hear you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank
yes,
you.
Sir. Thanks for the lecture. Which one is more preferable? It is within or outside? A type of recruitment, so that for organization to be more effective and more productive, if we want to do recruitment, which one is the best, sir?
Like I said in almost in the closing statement for the lecture, I said that they are all relevant, and it depends on which or what position you are recruiting for. Like the course material have told us that when you are recruiting for certain administrative position, it should be from within. And if you're recruiting for certain professional positions, you can outsource it, or it should be from the outside. Like, okay, we have all heard of consultancy. You see people working for an organization, and after a while, they tell you that they want to stay on their own, they want to be consultants to the organization. Such kinds of sensitive positions, you can recruit from outside. So they are all very relevant, but it depends on the purpose of what you are set out to achieve. So that is what determines the position or the approach to use. So I don't know if that answers you. Emmanuel, are you okay? Okay.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good evening, sir. My name is Odura from Lagos Radio Sector.
Okay, I didn't get the name.
My name is Odura Inaloko Alex from Lagos.
Yes, I'm okay, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes,
Emmanuel.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you, Alex.
Yes, I need a clarification under the merit of a recruitment. Precisely, there's a point in the it undermines the principles of equalities of opportunity as a recruitment. I did understand the clear point on that point. Under the
Are you reading?
Hello, sir.
Are you reading from somewhere? Can you take us to where you're reading from? Then let's check it together.
Okay, I say under the merit. I mean the defeat of recruitment within.
Okay.
There's a point 3. The defeat of recruitment within. You see point 3. It undermines the principles of equality of opportunities. I need more clarification on that.
I want to get to where you're reading from, but if I got you correctly, you are talking about the defects of recruitment from within.
Indeed, yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The under point 3 of it.
Okay, can you see the screen now? It undermines the principle of equality of opportunity as recruitment is confined to those who are already in service. Is that what you want us to discuss a little?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, what that is saying is that when you concentrate recruitment to higher positions from within the service and not giving opportunity to people from outside to compete for the same position, that it is not entirely accurate. Remember, the whole idea of recruitment from within is that people should focus their attention on the staff that are already within the system, that they understand more, they have more experience than bringing people from outside. So what defect means is disadvantage. The disadvantage of having people within promoted to positions of authority or higher position is that you rule out the opportunities for people that are not in the system. And it is not entirely good. Like, everybody should have level playing ground to rise to the highest position as it concerns their professionalism or the experience that they already have. So that is what that statement means. That in as much as recruiting from inside is good, it means you are not giving opportunity to people that are not inside. And it is not entirely good. Everybody should have equal opportunity to grow. So that is just the idea.
So the point there,
so I don't know if that answers you.
The point there is it is condemn an undemocratic system.
Yes, if you concentrate it only for people inside, like in your organization now, or supposing you want to work where Emmanuel works, and they tell you that there's no vacancy because it's only people that are already working where Emmanuel works. that can grow to the highest position, you will feel shortchanged. You will feel unhappy because you are not given the opportunity to work where you want to work. Like we know it in this country, there are some offices that you will never hear of their recruitment, but you continue to see people either they choose.
Exactly.
So I want to ask
like that. They don't give the opportunity for people to come from outside. Okay, someone else is talking. I don't know if that answers you, Alex.
Yes, sir. Yes, I am okay, sir. I'm okay, sir.
Okay.
I want to ask question. Hello, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
I
Good
can
evening.
hear you. Yes.
Sir.
If I'm right, good evening.
Okay, can you hear me, sir? Sir, what I want to ask, what is the difference between promotion and conversion? Because you said here now that there are certain positions that are reserved for promotion. Then if there are certain positions, you know that when you are being promoted, it's the same that your position that you are going to ascend. They won't give you new promotion. They will give you new position. But in conversion now, you know that you are going to, ascend to entirely a new promotion, a new position. So what's the difference? So in an organization now, is it good for them to convert people or just to give them a normal promotion process?
Okay, when you're talking of conversion in an organization, it means that where the present position you occupy is not giving you the desired result or the desired promotion that should come your way. That is what brings about the idea of conversion. Like if you step into an organization and maybe with a secondary school certificate, for example, and now you are doing a degree and you eventually get your degree, there is every tendency that maybe for secondary school position, you might get to certain rank and you cannot go beyond it.
Yes.
So for you to go beyond and get to the highest position, you must be converted to the mainstream service. So when you talk about conversion, it means you don't have the opportunity of growing to the highest position in the organization. That is why you seek for conversion. So they are all relevant, but dependent on your level of qualification and the level of experience and promotion that you can have by virtue of your qualification. Okay. So conversion most times is for people that are aspiring for higher position and they now have higher qualifications. Like if you're where you're working now, if you're working with a secondary certificate, for example, and you get your degree, you will definitely put in for conversion because you know that with a secondary school, there is a position you get to and you cannot grow beyond that. Yes. But when you convert, you can rise to become permanent secretary, director, as the case may be. So I don't know if that answers you. So both of them are relevant in the system. It now depends on the individual pursuing the position that he or she wants.
Important. Okay. Okay, sir.
All right, thank you. Any other question? We have 2 minutes to round up.
Yes, it's not a question, but you mentioned something that you take a class under a point system, which I don't know where the class going on there. So I want to just check if there's a video for it.
Discussion. Definitely there's a video for it, yes. Okay, maybe you should liaise with Madam Ifeoma. I think she coordinates the class at the moment and she's doing a wonderful job. She can direct you to the video and you can listen to it and then read through as well. The materials are there and they are easy for anyone to understand. So I bet when you read through it, you would understand. And if you don't, if you're on the platform, I can answer you on the platform.
Okay, so thank you.
All right, thank you everyone, and then enjoy the rest of the evening. Yes, okay, so this is where we would be ending our class.
Thank you, sir.
Today.
So are we having on Thursday?